So before I started playing Elden Ring, I had played some hours of Dark Souls 1 to get some experience and get the basic vibe of the game, for I had no idea what to expect of these type of video games, for up until that point, the only hard video games that I played that weren't online or PvP was stuff like Jedi Fallen Order or God of War, which are nothing compared to the Souls games in terms of difficulty. So while saving up for Elden Ring, I played Dark Souls 1, and boy, did those couple of hours of gameplay change my taste in video games and life. I only played until Anne Orlando, but after recently finishing Elden Ring, I thought about returning to finish up Dark Souls 1 in a new game. So in this video, I will talk about the things Dark Souls 1 did better than Elden Ring in my opinion. And also, keep in mind, I still haven't finished Dark Souls 1, so some of you who have finished the game might have different opinions than the ones I have in this video. Now, one thing that makes Dark Souls stand out from other From Software titles and other companies is that it's all connected. The world of Dark Souls feels like one huge maze that keeps on expanding and also looping back into itself at the same time. A good way to explain the world design of Dark Souls is to imagine a huge stack of pizzas on top of each other. Each pizza tastes different, has a unique taste, and let's consider each pizza a level of Dark Souls 1. So some of these pizzas might taste good, some may taste bad, but overall, it's like a huge vertical tower. Now, compared to Elden Ring, let us imagine a huge table that has many pizzas spread around. Some may be touching each other, being connected, and some pizzas maybe at the end of the table, spread out. Now, some people might prefer the world design of Elden Ring because it's huge and offers more freedom, so you're not necessarily stuck at a specific boss or a specific location, but that does come at a cost, the replay value. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's just say the world of Elden Ring is very huge, and after finishing the game, it will feel very, very tiresome. It felt tiresome for me and New Game Plus, having to do all that stuff again without having the ability to teleport to the sites of grace. So it's just overall very tiresome to do stuff and repeat stuff that you don't necessarily need to do, but you need to do for specific items. And another thing I would like to add is when it comes to starting a new game or doing a New Game Plus in Elden Ring, it generally feels less engaging for me because of the fact that it's an open world and it's very huge. And it took me about 110 hours to beat the game in my first run. Usually it takes 60 hours or 50 hours to beat, I think. I'm not really sure about that number, but that's still a lot in order to beat the game again if you want to get a different ending for a trophy or something like that. So that's why I feel like Dark Souls 1 is better when it comes to replay value, because it's interconnected and also it is vertical. Now, I enjoy the verticality, I'm not sure if that's a word, of Dark Souls 1 over the huge landscape that is Elden Ring, where you have layers on top of each other, like the previous analogy I said. And moving on, I wanted to talk about another thing that in my opinion Dark Souls 1 did better than Elden Ring, and that is the music. I am the type of guy that enjoys listening to music from Skyrim or other video games while studying, or working on something, or just watching nature. The same also applies for music from movies. So when it comes to the music that From Software makes for its games, they never miss. The way they use music in Dark Souls 1 is kind of different than the way most games use music. For example, background music is basically non-existent except for a handful of locations and bosses. The locations that do contain music are areas like Firelink Shrine, which is basically your main hub area, and the Daughters of Chaos's bonfire, Gwynevier's bedroom, and Ash Lake. Now, the areas that do contain music convey a certain vibe and a tone different to each other. For example, the Daughters of Chaos's bonfire Now, I feel that the Daughters of Chaos's bonfire gives you the feeling of sorrow or grief. And now, moving on to the next location, which is Ash Lake. Now, when I first found Ash Lake, I got that feeling that I maybe shouldn't be here, but at the same time, I was curious. And I was in awe over the huge vastness. Like, words cannot describe the feelings I had when I first found Ash Lake, because you're not really supposed to find it. From Software doesn't care if you find Ash Lake or not, and that is what I like about these Souls games. Now, because of the lack of background music in most areas of the game, except for boss areas, this gives the player a feeling of isolation and helps you focus. Also, I feel that the music acts as a tool to help the player feel comfortable in most cases, but that's not the case here in Dark Souls. This sends a message to the player. It's like the game saying, "Don't get comfortable. There is no one guiding you or pushing you." Also, the lack of background music also helps when it comes to areas that do contain music, helping signify this area or boss's importance. Now, compared to Elden Ring, the music in Elden Ring does not come close to Dark Souls' music. And that's in my opinion. If I could describe the music in Elden Ring with one word, it would be forgettable or lacking. Like, the general ambience of the game is just off for me. The only good part of the music in Elden Ring would probably be some of the boss fights, but they also don't come close to the music in Dark Souls bosses. If you don't agree with me, let me just ask you a simple question. Name your favorite track from the OST of Elden Ring. You can't name one, because basically it's all repeated. Maybe you could think of a boss's theme, but other than that, you're just stuck. And also for me, I feel like there is nothing unique in the themes of Elden Ring's background music for the areas. They all feel similar to each other, doesn't contain the uniqueness in Dark Souls 1. Everything sounds similar to Limgrave, in my opinion. Now moving on to the final part of the video, and possibly the most controversial part of the video, the bosses. When I say the bosses in Dark Souls are better, I do not mean the bosses in Elden Ring are bad. No, these bosses are still good. However, they have way too long combos, and that problem is shown more in DLC. And the bosses have some attacks that are nearly impossible to evade. Now, compared to Dark Souls had a formula where the bosses were hard but fair. If you died or got hit, it was 100% your fault because you weren't paying attention or mistimed a dodge. Now, Dark Souls bosses are often confined to smaller arenas, which limits their mobility, making them more predictable. Now, this gets balanced with your lack of mobility, or being able to roll in more than 4 directions. In Elden Ring, your character is more flexible and agile in terms of movement, so it's easier for you to escape in the arena from the boss. But in Dark Souls, you had to be precise, you had to be able to manage your stamina, and be able to commit to what movement you already made, because the animations in Dark Souls 1 are much slower than the ones in Elden Ring when you attack. So in conclusion, I would first like to say that I still did not complete Dark Souls 1. I had only played a total of 50 to 40 hours on my first run, but I was playing it temporarily until I got Elden Ring. So if you do not agree with me, that's fine. But I felt a more emotional connection towards Dark Souls 1, and I'm pretty sure that the only time I felt a bit emotional while playing Elden Ring was when I saw the dead merchants. While technically Elden Ring is more accessible for people because of its huge open world design, where you have the freedom to bang your head on a boss until you win, or explore and prepare for the boss to be stronger instead of the more linear option, which is Dark Souls 1, where you were either stuck on the boss or had to farm next to the boss to level up so you can be strong enough to take a hit from him or deal enough damage to actually kill him. Also, I'd like to add that the music in Elden Ring is like 80% repeated, which is why I didn't feel like much of a connection to it compared to Dark Souls. And most of the other Dark Souls series, like Dark Souls 2 or 3, the music for the bosses or the environment is usually amazing. So that's why I like, except for the boss, the Ancestor Spirit boss, the music there was actually kind of amazing. Alright guys, this is it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and a comment, or subscribe if you really did like the video. And I'll hopefully see you in the next video.